Hello! This is the seventh episode of the Gabriel podcast. Today, my guest is Gustavo Delgado over here. Hello,
Oh,
Gustavo. How
hi
are you doing
Gabriel.
today?
Doing good, evening, but doing good. And yourself?
I'm doing good. My day's gone as expected, and nothing went bad. So I'm doing pretty well, and also very excited to hear our discussions today. We had we had like 30 minutes. We were talking for like 30 minutes before we started here, and
Yeah.
I mean we covered a wide range of interesting topics already, so we might touch on those a little bit. So yeah, I'm excited to hear it. Do you want to give the viewers a little bit of a introduction on how we met and uh, about a little bit of the early schooling for you?
Yeah, for sure. So basically I met Gabriel through middle school. Um, basically sixth grade, and thankfully, that's when they released the K through 8 program in John Muir. And, including him, I also met like my other friends, like I'm pretty sure Giovanni, Reggie. And from there, we also I know recently you also did another podcast with Benji,
Mm-hmm.
and we were also in the same basketball team as well.
Mm-hmm.
So we've been doing that, for I believe like the rest of the middle school. But yeah, that's how I met Gabriel. And we were just on and off, and most of the time I would always see them in the basketball courts, and sometimes I would just join them or just chill out with my other friends as well. But it was a good thing that happened because now we're here, and you know thankfully through that I've met more friends and more acquaintances through you. So it's really, I'm really grateful for that. But yeah, um that's basically how we met.
Mm-hmm.
And you know life goes on from there. But for me, just to say like a little bit about myself, that specific year was actually when, and I remember this clearly, a week before when sixth grade started, I did get diagnosed with diabetes.
Mm.
So from there it was most likely the toughest challenge from my childhood, because it was a very new experience for me. And you know there was a lot of people, specifically in my immediate family, who were very worried about what would happen to me. And just TLDR, I'm okay, I'm safe, I'm healthy, nothing too serious. So, but I can probably touch a bit more on like probably the processes on that. But um that was a big challenge. And then mostly, I believe middle school was more when I found out like the things I did like and didn't like. But, you know, yeah, I can probably touch on that a little bit more as I talk about myself like later down the line. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'd love if you'd like to expand a little bit on that time period where you kind of just um kind of discovered or like came upon or when you were diagnosed with diabetes, like like how was like you mentioned a little bit on it, like kind of like the transition. Is there like how did you deal with that? Was it a shock or like?
It was a shock, but the thing is I didn't understand why at the time until I got into high school. That's when my parents told me like my dad's side had the gene for it. So that
Mm-hmm.
explained why I got it. But the transition was, everyone was sad when I got it at first because they thought I was gonna die. Uh, and I was more scared because I'm like, I have to live with this for the rest of my life. And then, you know, and then at the same time, I was gonna be late for my first week of middle school because I was in the hospital. So that was that was tough, getting out of the hospital and then going straight directly into, my I believe it was your guys' second week, but then, my first week of middle school. And, you know, I had to like I know nobody knew at first, but then I remembered over time I got a little bit more comfortable talking about it and spreading the awareness. I remember doing things in I believe it was Mrs. Wells' class, like in
Mm-hmm.
science. And, I asked her like if there's any way I can talk about it. And, she said yeah, and that actually helped spread awareness. I'm pretty sure to everybody who was in my class or other classes about, the real situation that I had to deal with, as well as, other people who have to live with it as well. Like, you know, a lot of people are scared about like shots, you know. I don't know. I haven't seen any small adolescent or child like not afraid of getting like their finger pricked or, having injections in them like at least 4 times a day. So, when people think, wow, you do 4 shots a day or more, they're like, what? Like it's kind of crazy. But, I did that for I believe 5 or 6 years until I finally got an automated uh delivery system. So then instead of four plus times a day, I only do it one time every 3 days. So that cuts down on a lot of injections in myself. But anyways, back to middle school. um it was mixed because unfortunately there were some kids who did not understand the real possibilities of that disease. Like they would actually make fun of me for it. Like
Wow.
um yeah, like for some examples, like they would like tease me on like, oh, I can't eat this, I can't have that. um they would like make fun of like, let's say like, you know kids are kids, I understand that, but like uh candies, for example, like I couldn't really have those, you know when in reality I could, but I just had to correct the medication for it through an injection. But since it was very early at that stage, I couldn't really do that. So there was a lot of things that I was limited until um, things got more under control. But yeah, there were actually some kids who actually made fun of me for a disease, which, now that I think about it, it's kind of messed up. But at the same time, like I just feel like kids don't know any better, and they'll probably realize it. Excuse me. They'll probably realize it, hopefully, excuse me again,
No, no problem.
you know, uh, down the road, like as they grow up, they probably might be like, why did I say that? There are some people who I feel like may think that way, and I'm sure like all of us or some or most of us can agree like we've did some actions that we look back upon today and just question, why did we do that? you know but those were tough 3 years. And then, as well as, like I said, with the basketball thing, um I always had to check that I was okay, because considering you guys could go like for however long, but for me, like, I kind of have limitations. And unfortunately, I have Like sometimes I just have to stop and I could not, do the practice anymore because of, the diabetes. But I know Benji understood because he knew, and I just had to get things taken care of and just keep going. And alongside from that, um that's when I started to like the math and sciences as well. So like Miss Collins and Miss Wells were like my favorite classes to go through. Um and then I was also into music. So I was, you know, doing, I forget her name, but I know before I got into the K through 8, I was doing violin at first, but then I changed to clarinet until like I got out. But most of my middle school experiences were otherwisely good, you know. And then, we all graduated from K through 8, and then you went to poly, almost uh mostly everybody that I was close with went to poly. A very, very few people went to Cabrillo where I went to. But from there, that's when I kind of branched off from you guys. I know like every now and then I would see you guys still, but I was basically over there. Um, so high school.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that was mostly when I think it was the end of it where I got my machine. But high school for me, it was it was a roller coaster. um Mentally, emotionally, and physically. Um I know I haven't really said too much about my high school life, like in depth. Like usually I would give like a TLDR about it, but I
Mm-hmm.
don't mind like in this case. Um for me, I had to deal with the stigma of first, being in that high school. Like I know at the time that high school was a lot of people would bag on the students who were there just for being in the high school because of I know for a fact its reputation was pretty bad like back in the day because my brother was in it and I've heard a lot of stories. But as the years went on, my specific year actually turned the whole school around into like one of like what it is now today. A lot of good students there, a lot of good friends there. I have a friend there who actually, I believe, works in NASA.
Wow.
You know, uh, another one in aerospace engineering. A lot of the engineering people, because that was the program I was in, and I don't regret any of it because that's when I discovered like I like engineering. Um, and I was put into that group. So I worked on robotics, um, electrical engineering, um, underwater robotic competitions. I've done those. Um, I did quite a bit of stuff, and then like little cars that just kind of go around and like coding. Like, now that I think about it, I don't know how many like high schools around this area do like engineering programs to that standard. And we even had like a CNC machine 3D printer that we were able to use. Like it was pretty crazy, but in a good way. And I enjoyed everything about it. And for me, that's when I discovered like I wanted to do biomedical engineering because one of the things that pushed me towards that was, my condition, the diabetes. And then I wanted to help people. And I've just heard biomedical engineering was like, oh, you get to help people with, math and sciences, which I like. And then there's like a lot of other things that I'm like, I can build something to make a person's life more easier. That was in high school. And I still would love to do it, but unfortunately now I can't. I'll probably explain why for that later. But that was the mentality I had. And I really wanted to do that. So a lot of good students, friends there who worked really hard and that kind of, how do I say it? That program. And and then at the same time, that's when, you know, a lot of new experiences. And in I was also in the marching band there as well. Um, and those were the years where I started to get into piano. Even
Oh.
though like it's kind of funny how I even got into piano because, you know, this the second year of high school, so my sophomore year, I was like I noticed that they had a jazz band and I'm like I would like to be in the jazz band. And then my director there, she she already knew I was in one of the ensembles. As I said, I in middle school I was playing clarinet, but she's like, "Oh, we need a pianist." And then she's like, "Do you want to play piano?" I'm like, "Okay." That's how I that's how it started. And you know, I don't regret that either because I mean, I'm pretty sure you can see I have the piano right here with me, and I do practice it every now and then. But I really that's my favorite instrument. Like even though I played clarinet for so much longer, I just I just feel so much better with the piano, and I've had so much better experiences with it, especially in college. Um, but yeah, and then you know, I'm pretty sure everyone deals with like hormonal changes and then relationships or you know, uh, you know, I've had those, and I would say for me it was not a very good experience.
Mm.
Mo I But it's okay. Um, whatever's happened has happened, and I always think even though high school was probably the worst for my emotional and mental state, um, in college I kind of just accepted it, and I just look back at it and like uh everything that I've dealt with, I can I know what happened and what to do, and I've helped so many people because of like the negative things that happened to me. Like I can just tell people like, hey, you know I can tell them about my experiences and what happened, and what I've learned, like how people work kind of thing. And hopefully like what I say to them helps them and avoids like any kind of stress or negative impact in their life. And I was pretty happy with most of the results that I've did with like my friends or other people, because a lot of people did tell me that they get help out of it. So, even though, and I think everybody should think of this in a way, like anything that you deal with or have a negative experience, like don't think of it as a negative experience. Like look at it as, it's an experience you've had, and what can you get out of that experience and make it into a positive, you know? And I think people would, you know, live better just thinking that way. Of course, I can't speak for everybody, and I know that people have different values or different ways of thinking, but at least from my opinion, I just think that any experience that anybody goes through, if you just turn those negatives into a positive, your life outlook would look so much better, you know, um, as well as for the people around you, because from there you can just tell people about like what you've been through and what you learned from it, and people can learn. And for me, it's how to say, it's rewarding to see people gain some information to help themselves to avoid or deal with certain situations that they may come across to, down the road. You never know. So I'm pretty happy about that. Um, but yeah, I mean, even though it was one of the most challenging parts of my life, um, nowadays I just think of anything that's happened negatively in my life. I just try to not think of it so harshly on myself, even though like I know at first like it may hurt in the beginning, and that's understandable. Um, people have, I feel like people need time to like just let it sink in, and then then you can you know accept what's happened and move on, or I wish I had like better ways of wording it. Sometimes I suck at wording things.
Oh no, it's. I mean, it's made
Yeah,
sense to me.
it's just you know I'm just happy like how I kind of turned out in terms of that aspect through high school, even though I realized it in my college years. But yeah, I mean, that was a TLDR of high school. And then I believe the last year of high school was when I finally got my automatic, uh, they call it a pump, an insulin pump. So that's when I don't have to do like 4 shots a day. Um, Basically, what they tell me is like I have to be diagnosed with it and wait like 5 or 6 years until I can get it. Basically, it's just protocol because they need to see like I'm actually taking care of myself and know what I'm doing before they give me that kind of equipment. But it's really changed my life because now, since then, I can just like instead of having to carry, you know, everything with me, like my injections, my medicine, everything, like from there I was like, okay, what am I gonna eat? Like, um, if people don't know, we have to count carbohydrates, and that's how we measure our medicine intake. And everyone has a different medicine intake for that disease depending on what their doctor describes them. But from there, I would have to see what do I want to eat, and I would have to put in medicine before I eat. Now, the problem with that is sometimes I may not eat everything, which means I overdosed myself. So I'm basically forced to make sure I eat everything. Or if I'm still hungry and I wanted more, I would have to do another injection. And I always hated it. Like I always like I never like just being like that's why I never like got anything extra because I'm like I don't want to put another injection for something else that I want, even if it's like so small. And that was, I mean, even though it sounds like, you can just do it, but for me, having to deal with that for about 6 years before I got my pup was very, very, I don't want to say it was an annoyance, even though it kind of was, but it was inconvenient, um, and very stressful because I would always have to be perfect, and otherwise I would either overdose myself or not. But now I can just get something, get what I want, and then I just with the press of a button, I can just, and that's it. Like I don't have
Wow.
to do injection. I can just be like, this is what it is. I already have the thing in me, so I don't need. I just have to put in whatever I need to do, and that's it.
Uh,
You know. So it makes me more flexible on what I want to do, because like let's say. because like I've always had bad experiences when I went to amusement parks.
Really?
Yes. And that's mainly because of the insulin and the disease. Like I can't just go wherever I want, be like, I want that, or I want this drink, or I would have to consider like, oh, I have to do another shot. Oh, I have to uh okay, how much is this? I have to put in this, and then I'm exercising, which actually lowers it even more. So then I would have to be like, I would have to eat it, and if I don't, I would kind of be screwed. uh, but thankfully, I don't have to worry about that anymore, and I can just this is also one of the reasons why I wanted to be a biomedical engineer because like it makes life more simpler and easier, and for most of the people who have to deal with it, they can just not worry about it. Even though, yes, you still need to be aware of what you do and use the device correctly, but that's the point. Like, you're making people's lives simpler for the better of their health. And that was the main reason, again, biomedical engineer, because I wanted to make something like maybe I can do something that can be better, you know? But yeah, and then college was when a lot of the fun things started to happen. So like from high school was a lot of the bad things, but then college was most of the good things because I traveled a lot due to me being a music major. So I went to Vegas, I went to Reno, went to Sacramento, um, San Diego, and then I also just went around South Cali to do um, a lot of these performances around, as well as performing in concerts and solos as well, which was a very fun experience. I mean, it's stressful being a music major, um, because I was also double majoring as a biomedical engineer as well. But the first I wanted to do was music. Um, that experience for me, you know, anybody who's going into it, basically, most of the colleges, they're gonna require you to do a audition. So you're gonna have to perform for, some of the directors who are um in that uh how to say, basically in that field. So you're gonna have to perform, and then from there they're just gonna be like, okay, you either pass and get into the uh how do I say, you're basically accepted into the major basically,
Mm-hmm.
or not. So basically, depending on your performance and how well you did, depends on if you make it or not. So it's a bit of, talent, stress. Um, but I got it, thankfully. And, from there it was when I really started to appreciate like the people who actually cared about doing music. Because in high school, a lot of the students there didn't really care. But the the skill level, I would say it was very it wasn't steep enough where I couldn't do it, but it was steep enough where I noticed the pressure where people cared, and it's something that I wanted from everybody else, as well as something for myself to be a better musician. So I started out in the wind ensemble with the clarinet, and for the first, I believe, I think it was for the first year or two where I was in the last chairs. And if you don't know what that means, there's like people think it's ranks, but mostly like there's like first chair, second chair, third chair, and sometimes even there's a fourth chair, depending on what parts need to be done. Mostly the higher chairs get more of like the more harder repertoire. which is like harder parts basically and things that stand out more. So you can think of them as more of a soloist. There may even be like a solo part. Uh, but I had to go, I think in my third year was when I finally got up to first or solo. So for clarinet. So I was basically um in charge of, everybody who was, in my section for the clarinets. And I just had to make sure like they did their things right. So I was basically the leader in that section and make sure everything went correctly and, make sure that I did everything correctly as well because mostly we just go into rehearsal and the main point of going to rehearsal is we need to make sure everything is good when we do our concerts. And for myself, um, I'm just proud, of like how far I've got through as a musician from there for clarinet. Even though like, as much as I play clarinet, I know for myself I'm the most skilled at it than piano, but I enjoy piano more. Um, but I went to I don't know where we went to, damn. But there was a time where for wind ensemble where we went on a trip and we were doing this concert in this very big hall, but we got spoiled and we were able to see like this have you ever seen these live shows? Like it was like a comedy, like think of it like a dinner theater. So there's like a live cast, and then there's like people below who are playing the music based on what was happening, and it was a comedy.
Mm, interesting.
So I don't know what that's called. I best thing I can think of is a dinner theater, but we weren't eating dinner, but we were watching like a comedy show, and then we saw like everybody in the pit just playing like based on what was happening. It was really good, and personally, I was never into those until I saw that one. I was laughing so much. I was just like, this is really good. And I was just amazed like how talented like the actors were as well as like the musicians below uh who did their job correctly at perfectly too. Like I did not notice any mistake. It was that good. So you know, a lot of the entertainment business, like if anybody has time to just watch a show like that, even though currently, as we all know, uh, that's kind of not possible. Maybe hopefully by the end of this year or next year, maybe things will start to go back where they were. But if anybody does have a chance, I highly recommend just watching like a live show. It's so good. Like although unfortunately I don't know the names of which ones are good, but at least in my experiences it was a good experience. Um so a lot of perks of being a musician, you get to travel a lot, but you have to understand that being a musician, you're doing it because it's your passion. Um I'm pretty sure a lot of people know that a lot of musicians don't make a lot of money, you know, and that's a lot of uh things I hear about people like, why do you want to be a musician? Like you should be a doctor, you should be something that actually gets you money. But, you know, in my opinion, I mean, I understand that is true, but I feel like people should do what they really want to do, because if you're not really doing the things you want to do, then like are you going to be happy with your life? Are you going to feel like accomplished on like what you feel like you need to do in this world? You know, basically everyone needs to find that purpose for themselves or that that drive to do something that you want to do no matter what it is. I understand there's also people who may not have the option to do that due to either I heard like things like parents won't allow them or, you know, some cultural things or religious things. But, you know, I just feel like everybody should do things ultimately for themselves. But, you know, that can be something, people may have agree or may not agree with, but I mean, for me it's something that I feel strongly about. But yeah, musicians don't really make that much, but you're doing it like again, you want to play for people. And some people think of it as, you know, I've heard so many stories like where somebody plays and it like that emotion people get from them playing a certain piece actually helps. Like I've heard things like it helps them mentally in a sense where it helps them get through, like, let's say depression or something they've been dealing with, or, you know, music has a lot of influence on a person's mental standpoint, you know, although I'm not really heavily researched into that, but there are just instances where I've heard where music does help people in those kinds of instances. So that's also a thing. You know, there's many different reasons why a musician does what they do. Maybe they want to do it for the money, or maybe they like to travel, like because they musicians realistically need to travel and go out. There's a lot of things, but my experiences for that was great. And then in the jazz band side of things, that was when I was the pianist for the college for that big band. And I would say as stressful as it was, because that first year everyone told me you're gonna hate yourself. uh because of how hard it was. And they were not kidding. But like that first year was like I had to learn on the fly, and I had to learn so quickly because there were so many things I did not understand, and I had to spend hours and hours and hours to finally understand like what the heck everything I was reading, because I knew nothing. Like I thought high school was hard. I went in there and I just wanted to cry, but it was that hard. Uh, but I pushed through it. I got through it, and I was there for basically 3 years until life happened. Uh, but I did visit Reno. Basically, we drove all the way up from the Long Beach area all the way up to Northern California. There were some few stops along the way, and we did some performances for actually some elementary school kids and middle school kids along the way, which was pretty fun too. Um, but yeah, like the trips, they're the best things that's happened in my music uh education. You know, if you like if you like to travel and play, I highly suggest, like, if you want to be in a music major, then yeah, it's really fun. But just do it because you like to play. Like, don't do it because you want to travel. Because in the end, you're not gonna feel like it's worth it. You gotta like everything around it. So, but Reno was really fun. Um, a lot of good times with a lot of my music friends. But yeah, I mean, I'll never forget those. And then that was basically a lot of my high school, not high school, college time. So, you know, um, in terms of the diabetes, like from there, everything just kind of calmed down. I have my medication, and then recently, I believe like 2 years ago, um, we always had to check our fingers, to check our numbers. They
Mm-hmm.
finally, at least for me, they finally gave me something where I don't have to do that anymore. I just had to stick it on me and it reads my numbers like every 5 minutes.
Mm.
So it's really good. And then it also connects with my device. So then they both basically talk to each other. So like it's basically I don't really have to do anything to make sure I'm okay. Although when I do eat, I need to correct it. But basically it's a step forward for I guess diabetics in my situation to feel normal in quotation. uh but yeah, um after college, um my life kind of started to be a bit more busier because I had a relationship and I was mainly focused on trying to do that, but unfortunately that kind of came and went. But that's how life goes. And that basically happened in 2020, basically the year where everything kind of went down. uh but from there I was just thinking, you know what I wanted to do. And from there, that's when I got my first job. I actually worked in a farmer's market uh, vendor. So I basically traveled around and, I got to see a lot of new places and people through that job, even though I had to drive for quite a bit. And I mean, even though technically I was employed, it felt like I was self-employed because I did everything myself for what I had to do. And for though I think it was about 2 years working, like seeing people, at least in those areas, uh, everybody is so nice. Like, like I always had this stigma where just people aren't communicative or they're nice. But when I started working there, it just kind of gave me like the that sense of like people are nice. Like they like to talk. They like, and I've made a couple friends through the farmers market, and I've had a lot of experiences with them, and I can get into that a bit later. But like I was basically selling honey, and my job was basically trying to sell honey, but a lot of people, thankfully, they liked the honey, but they also liked to talk to me. So I made a lot of friends with customers and they always know me. And they're always like, if I'm out one day, they're like, where did I go? You know? So it's like I've had a lot of connections and bonds with a lot of the people that I've worked with as well as the customers there, which was really nice. And, that actually improved my mental standpoint, you know, about people. So, a lot of experiences with that. And then, I got to talk with a lot of vendors. And the best thing was I sometimes got groceries for free. So like I would work there and then in terms of, helping my parents out and stuff, I would get groceries from there while I'm working at a really good price or even like for free. And it adds up. Especially from farmers markets because they're expensive. But the thing is, like, I always hear people saying like, "Why are farmers markets so expensive?" And then I started to understand like why the vendors get so, I wouldn't say mad, but like it's just like you have to understand everybody there who works and does their own business. So they have to put in the labor to gather to make sure everything is fine. And that's a lot of work to put out on what they're giving to the consumer. Like for example, for the honey, for what I did, it would take hours and hours and weeks to just make something like this big, like a pound. And people are like, how much is it? And I'm like, $10. And they're like, it's so expensive. And then they're like, well, I would have to like it was always a repeat of like what I had to say. Like I would say never give the vendors like a negative attitude because like most of the time they work really, really hard to make sure like what they get out for everybody to, like the good stuff is like the best they can do. It's like and they need to make a living out of it too, because that's what they need to have to like pay their bills or their rent or whatever, as well as their property to grow those uh how to say produce. So it it kind of expanded my mindset on like at least in that area. So like I have a better respect for the people who are out there, even though it wasn't my business. I was actually hired from a friend of mine who was a friend of him. So then I worked in that family business, and it's tough, and thankfully they liked me.
Mm-hmm.
uh, but yeah, it was another good experiences for that 2 years, and specifically, um, the best one that I like personally is the farmers market in Laguna Niguel, which is about it's more south from where I am, about like 40-30 minutes away, and they have a farmers market there. It's the most Orange County. It's so pretty there, and everybody there is so nice. Like as much as like every other place is nice, but like the people there and like the amount of variety, um I think at least for me, it's the best one that I've been through, and that's where I made the most friends at actually. Um, when I first started, there was this chili guy, and he grew his own peppers,
Mm-hmm.
and I wasn't very fond of eating hot peppers, but at first I would always talk to him, and then the first like days I'm just like, okay. In my head, I'm like, I'm gonna build up for it, and then he gave me like, I'm pretty sure you know what a habanero is, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I ate that, and I was like, yeah. And I also made another friend by that way because he and I would always just talk to each other about the chilies, and thankfully from him and he actually got uh the push to do his own growing from that. So every now and then, like he would come by. He's like, I have some peppers that I grew, and I'm like, you grew them? He's like, yeah, because of what what we did. And then like he would also share them with me, and I actually built more tolerance from there after those 2 years. So the biggest challenge, and I'll get into this later, I ate the death chip.
Really?
I ate the death chip, but I'll get into that later. But I felt like all of that training was for that moment. Although I would never do it again, actually. But and I'll explain why. But from there, after those 2 years, I got a recommendation from another friend who was saying like, "Oh, there's this engineering job that needs this person, and I know that you used to do this in high school." And that's where this is why I appreciated what I did in high school because of the engineering program. And that's honestly how I got the job for that engineering job. Um, So I used to work for a plumbing industry called Murray Company. Basically, Southern California. And basically we would do like a lot of piping structures in like major uh buildings or even airports. Like I know specifically I worked in LAX, so it was pretty cool to see how LAX's structure was uh laid out and what needed to be fixed in that airport. I've also worked in the New Century Towers. Um, I've also worked in some hospitals, some HVAC systems. Uh, there was a lot of projects that I did work on. Those are a few of them, although it's some of them are pretty vague. Another one was this weird, I don't know, the building looked like a UFO, even though like I forget, like, but I think it was like an art gallery, but the way the building was structured looked like a UFO. Like it was so weird, but like I just saw like the entire schematic of everything, and I'm like, it felt really cool because I get to see everything before it's released in the public, basically. So even though a lot of stuff was confidential, I'm pretty sure it's okay to say it, although I can't really like say like all specifics. But it was it was nice to see like how everything worked out in the engineering aspect on how everything worked, and then I got a better understanding on like how pipelines worked, how showers worked, how faucets worked. So like, you know, it's kind of weird. Like the first few months I just had like the training was tough, but nowadays it's like I kind of know how the piping works now, although I don't have the tools for it, but I know how like those things work, which is pretty nice. But it was a lot of stress because of course in the engineering side of things everything needs to be perfect. You can't you can't have one thing mess up or else that kind of wastes a lot of money, time, and makes a lot of problems. Thankfully, I did my job okay, and I've had a lot of great people that I worked with over there, and they were so helpful. Um, Made sure that like all my questions were answered and everything I did was correct, and you know, a lot of my coworkers there were really on point on everything, and I got to learn a lot. But then 2020 happened, and a lot of people lost their jobs, including myself. So yeah, from there, my 2020 experience wasn't uh really good. But the day I will always remember was that death chip. So uh there was two chili heads there that I was acquainted with, and they they knew that I liked hot things, and they're like, "I have a death chip. Do you want it?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And I've heard so many stories, and like the one of my friends who's actually even more tolerant than me was actually on the floor. So I'm like, that kind of gave me a little bit of a red flag because I'm like, if he's more tolerant than me, I'm like, how am I gonna handle it? So he gave it to me, and it was in our lunch break, and I was talking with one of my friends right behind me, and I just decided, you know what, I'm just gonna eat it, and I was just talking to him, and I'm like, I'm just gonna eat half of it and see how I feel. And when I put it in, um, the thing I didn't like about it was the taste. It, mainly because there was like so much powder on it. So like the powder was like the worst thing. In terms of the heat, it was what I expected, a little bit more though. And then I was just telling him I'm fine, and I just had like a tear like running down my cheek. He's like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm okay." But
Mm-hmm.
that chip, even though I handled it all right, it's what happens after. Like there was so much heat in like my stomach after that, and then I started to get cramps. Yeah. So I've never experienced that before. Even when I tried like the actual like peppers, like the reapers and the scorpions, when I eat those, it's hot, but I don't feel that. When I ate that chip, I was like, I'm cramping. And the worst thing was I had school after that. I had class. So I had to deal with the pain through the entire day. That really sucked. So I am never doing that again, but at least I can say I've tried the death chip.
Oh
Uh,
my goodness.
but yeah, and then again, 2020 happened. A lot of things went down. Um, in terms of my experiences with that, um, I had unemployment, and unfortunately, during that year, since I lost my job, a lot of my medical insurances went out.
Mm,
So I was really, really struggling with my medication for about until this February, actually, from July.
wow.
So thankfully, I had enough reserves, or else I wouldn't be in a good spot. But thankfully, I'm okay. The I don't know what it is. Like the insurances things is a big. I don't know. I don't know how other people deal with it. I personally hate dealing with it. Until you're finally done with it, then you're done with it. But like just the process of getting into one, it's so stressful, you know. But yeah. And
Yeah.
yeah. And then February, that's when I got everything. Um, I believe this yeah, the beginning of this year was when I did get COVID on January 9th. And then I got tested, and then January 11th was when I got the paper saying like, "Oh, you're tested positive." So I had to stay isolated in my room for like 2 weeks. Um, my experience with that, thankfully, um, I didn't have any complications. It felt like the first day was mostly like body aches. Like I just had a
Hmm.
huge body ache and a headache, and it felt like I had a fever. So I just stayed in my room, and I just didn't feel good for like those 2 days. And then from there, it just felt like I kind of had a fever, cold, and then some coughing. Um, and that's basically how it was for 2 weeks. Um, it it sucked, uh, because I wanted to do things, and I think from that point, I believe until like last December when I was finally like, I'm just sick of just staying home. I wanted to do something. And that's when I decided to like just try to go out. And I did go to Vegas one time during that time. Um, but then January happened. I got sick. I couldn't really do anything until the end of the month. Um, but now I'm trying to go out again, even though still not recommended, but I'm trying to take all precautions I can to make sure, CDC guidelines and stuff, which everyone should be doing. Um, but yeah, I'm just like we were talking earlier, like when we first chatted, like you just had this feeling like you're just staying in your room or in bed, just doing nothing, and you're like just looking at yourself and just like I can't, you. and you're just thinking, you're like, I can't keep doing this. And you're like, you just need to do something. And then that's when you said, like, you started to do your routine. And for me, it's like I wanted to go out. And unfortunately, I mean, I still had unemployment at the time, so I could still do things. But then as time was running out, I'm like, okay, I need to find a job. And then I was looking and looking and looking, and it's still pretty hard. But um, one of my friends was like, maybe you should do Uber. And I'm like, but I don't want to drive people around. And I'm like, you can do delivery. And I'm like, okay, I'll try. And then I took the risk. And for me specifically, it's so weird. Like, I make like about double or more than what I used to make from my engineering job.
Wow.
So in my head, I'm like, I don't know. And now I'm just like, wow. Even though considered self-employed, and then, down the line, I know taxes are going to come and stuff, which might, I guess, balance it out. But it's kind of odd to think that I've been working, even though I love the job and I did get a lot of things out of it. Like, it's just weird to see, like, you're working for an engineering job and then you're doing something like as simple as driving, and you make about double or more, per hour.
Mm-hmm.
In my head, I'm like, I'm just gonna do this because I like driving, and thankfully I had a lot of experience with like customer service, considering what I did in the farmers market. So like a lot of people like me still. uh and of course, I mean, for me it's not stressful. um of course, those kinds of jobs, it can be a hit or miss with people. um and it just depends. Like, you kind of need to know, uh I would say, your marketplace in those kinds of jobs. But for me, I'm doing great now, and I'm mostly working on, like I told you earlier before, I was redesigning my room into something how I wanted it to always be for myself. And I've always wanted to do that since November. And I started in November, that project. And finally, I think it was yesterday where I finally finished it. So everything how I want it, it's like it's done.
Wow. That looks nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the. Let me see here. Yeah, man, I like it. Like, what were the walls always like that?
Um, these wells were always there, like this right here,
Mm-hmm.
like the wood. It was always there for insulation.
Mm.
But in terms of my room, a lot of the furniture, a lot of uh how to say, basically almost everything in here has
Mm-hmm.
been removed, and then something new has been put in there. So, yeah. Um, I used to have like a tiny desk. Now I have a bigger desk that I've always wanted, finally. Um, I've had a tiny bed, now I have a big bed. Um, LEDs, and then I know there's like some in the back in that closet that
Mm.
are there.
Yeah.
The only thing that I wish I had, like, for this kind of purpose is maybe a key light because this webcam does not do well in low light, which
Mm.
is why I kind of have all the lights on right now, or else it would look really grainy or noisy. So if I had a key light, that would actually improve the quality. It's a really good webcam, but if you don't have the lighting for it, it's not good. But I think you can say that with a lot of webcams. You just need to have good lighting. But yeah, a lot of the things now I am very content. Um, the hardest thing was keeping that piano in my room. I had no idea how I was gonna put keep this in, but I found a way. Um, but yeah, it was a lot of planning and measuring and being like, okay, what do I want? Um, Mostly my room is a neon color, but in this kind of setting, if I were to do that, you wouldn't see me as well, and I don't want that to happen. You need to see me. Um, but most of this time it's just neon, like how it is, like in the back, that kind of
Mm.
color. And then I have this right here is a projector, so it has like
Mm.
the whole stars like in my room.
That's
So it's
super
like a
cool.
little, yeah. Took took a while.
It took a while.
It took a
What?
while to do.
Where did you get the that idea from? The whole like projection thing.
Um, you know, it was when I started to want when I wanted to just redesign my room back in November,
Mm-hmm.
and I was just looking and I was still dealing with the breakup that I've recently went through at the time, and I'm just like I want to do something for myself, and I'm just like since I'm gonna be in my room most of the time, why don't I make it something where I want to be in? Even though I did recently tell you, like, I don't want to stay in my room the entire time. I want to go out, which I still do. But I wanted it to be more like I just come in here and I get to just relax kind of thing in the way I wanted it to be. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I just got this idea and I'm like, huh, I've always wanted, like, you know what nano leaves are, right?
No, actually,
You actually don't.
no.
Oh, that's interesting. It's basically these LED panels that can change color basically that look like triangles
Oh, I don't know about the triangles. Interesting.
or hexagons, either one.
Mm.
But it's like RGB basically.
Right.
And the thing is, what I wanted to do was like I wanted to make my room change color.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, the best way to do that is with LEDs. So then I got this idea right here.
Mm-hmm.
Even though it's white right now, I can change it to any color that I want it to. But of course, in this situation, I kind of need the white light so that my webcam can see me better. But I can change it to any color I want, any mood. Same thing with my computer on the side. Um, a lot of mood lighting, which helps the atmosphere in the room. But I was thinking mainly of a neon thing because I actually got those curtains that are like a neon. It's like a Tokyo thing. And
Mm-hmm.
I actually really liked the design of it and it went well with the room. Kind of made it feel more cozy. But yeah, that was like something I would always wanted to do. Like I just wanted something like for my computer, even though my computer setup isn't done because I want two monitors for it, but I'm not going to think about that right now. uh I still wanted to keep my piano in here. Um I used to have a twin size bed, but then I was thinking long term because I'm like, maybe in the future when I move out, or if like let's say I have somebody, I would need a bigger bet.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like, I feel like for myself, I wanted to get that bet, even though like it's for me, because I get to sleep on it. But in the case where in the future down the line, I can just be like, I have the mattress there. We like I don't have to like deal with anything like in terms of moving. I just have to take it and go. I have everything. Um, and then thankfully I don't have a lot of clothes. It's basically all tucked in the cabinets to make sure I have like that. There's like a lot of dragons right there. I do like collecting dragons,
No.
and I'm pretty sure you remember this. And I know Peter got me the last Christmas because I couldn't come uh the last Christmas unfortunately because I was dealing with like the medical insurances and financial things as well.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully this year I can. I'm pretty sure I can. Everything is actually turning up for the better. Um but yeah, I mean if anybody knows me and they wanted to give me something, if it's a dragon, I will happily take it. I I will happily take it. Uh, anything dragon related, I will take. Although I would be a little sad if it was like the exact same thing as one I had. I like different ones,
Mm-hmm.
even if they look similar. If it's something like slightly different, it'll be okay. But yeah, like that's something I've always liked, even since I was in middle school. Like I've always liked dragons.
Interesting. Did
Yeah.
it spawn from like a show or from
I don't know. They just looked cool.
they just look cool?
Yeah,
I
they
don't
just
know.
looked
I like
cool.
dragons.
Yeah. And then I just always liked the idea of just having them like the statues and I can just keep them like for display, you know. And then I also have one like literally right next to me. Although I can't really take it out, I would have to turn the webcam, but it's like a Tesla thing.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, cool.
But yeah, um that's a lot. I mean, I talk quite a bit.
No, yeah, I mean that was a lot. There were plenty of times where as you were telling your story that uh, I just wanted to interject and just ask a billion questions throughout your whole story there. But I mean, I just couldn't stop you because I was also very interested in how the story would end, and
Mhm.
kind of like how it. I just yeah, I just was very interested listening throughout the whole thing. But I took a lot of notes, and
Yeah.
um, and yeah, so I mean, there was a billion things that were interesting here. I mean, one of the things that were so you said that you in college you were in two kind of musical um groups. Was that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so
Yes.
so one was the one with the clarinet, and then the other one was the piano.
Yeah.
And did they start at the same time? I didn't get the time period there correctly.
No, okay, I don't think I mentioned. So the wind ensemble happened the first year of college, and
Mm-hmm.
um that's when I auditioned and stuff, and I didn't really know enough about the program. I didn't know that there was a big band that needed a pianist until next year.
Okay.
So from there, I just asked a lot of my colleagues and my fellow musicians. They're like, "Yeah, there's also a big band," and then they're like, "You can try to do piano," and I did, and I auditioned for it for piano, and I got in. So that happened the following year. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Okay, I'm probably gonna ask like a billion questions here, so maybe like bullet answers,
Okay.
like as like concise as you possibly can make it, so we can like get through all these questions. Because I have so many questions. So interesting, interesting. So one of the questions that I was burning. So I did. I don't know if we like. You talked a lot at some point about like what it takes to be, or like what you need to be. Like you need to be passionate about musician. Like you were like kind of
Mm,
emphasizing like, oh, like this is like why you should go into, musician, not traveling, not for the money, um, not because of anything else other than like you just like to play music kind of thing. So, but my question, I guess, specific to you is kind of like how, like, kind of like why were you really interested in music? Like, kind of like your beginning into that. Was it something you just kind of fell into, and then you
Um,
kind of
I
started from there?
always, I always thought it was because of my brother,
Mm.
because he used to play cello, and I used to watch him play, and I always thought like I want to play too. And
Oh,
that's when I started playing the violin. But then I'm like, I want to try something new. And then that's when I got into clarinet. And then, from there, clarinet into piano. I would say it's mainly because of my brother.
wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. The
But
mhm.
yeah. Oh, but he's a I mean, he's not a musician anymore. He's a culinary culinary arts.
Mhm.
He's a cook.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
So
My other question, you talked about like in college you were a double major,
yes.
music and bioengineering.
Yes.
So how
Yeah.
was that? Did you enter as a double major, or how did that come about?
Yes. So a lot of people thought I was dumb for doing it. I can see why because it's a lot of work. But the way I saw it was, you know, it's they're both things I want to do, and I don't think I ever mentioned why I had to get out of it, but I'll probably say that. Um, so I went into music because I wanted to do, what I wanted to do.
Mhm.
And my plan was like finish music first, which I did, and I could get my degree at any time. But then I wanted to finish my other side for the biomedical engineering. So, like my Calc 2, Calc 3 physics stuff. But unfortunately for me, as time went on, financial things kind of played a part and I had to do something. And for me, my parents couldn't wait that long and they needed me to do something. So unfortunately, I had to do something else, even though, you know, but it's okay. I mean, I'm I'm pretty sure I can go back into it like when things settle or I can go back into or actually no, because recently I kind of figured out I really like computers. So I'm kind of like all over the place. So
I feel that.
so now I want to do like software engineering because I
Mm.
really like computers. Like I've always like watched a lot of computer stuff online, like videos, like how things work, how components work. For me, it's like a hobby, but at the same time, I'm learning a lot of stuff as well. So it's probably something I would like to do. And for me, it's still engineering. I still want to do engineering. So it's something that I would still love to do. But then I just like computers. So I'm like, I want to do that and see how that works out.
Right. You were talking about software engineer. Were you more interested in like the programming and coding, or like more of like the physical component?
Physical
The
components.
physical component.
So
Oh,
like
interesting.
the CPUs, the GPUs, motherboards, like basically how everything works and how to do it, how like why things work, like what makes it like I could probably go on and on, but I'm trying to make it as simple as sounding because then if I say these words, it's gonna be like, what's that? Maybe, but yeah, it's it's something that I'm very interested in that I would like to do.
100%. Yeah, definitely. I'm always up for like trying to encourage people, to like if you're interested in something. I mean, you have a long life, you know.
Yeah.
You got a long life to explore all these things that pique your interest and see where it takes you, kind of thing. So yeah, definitely. Okay, so other questions that I have, man. There was a lot. Let's see. Double major. Okay, so recitals. There's a quick question on recitals. Okay, so when you entered college, were you aware? Like, were how aware were you of like your skill level? Like, I know you said you were nervous and like, but did you know like
Um,
you had what it took to like kind of to get there?
for clarinet, yes,
Oh,
which
okay.
is why I auditioned for clarinet
Mhm.
for that specific reason. I knew if I did another instrument like piano, I would not get into it because I wasn't confident enough for that.
Oh, okay.
Uh, yeah.
Was it based on
So,
like all your experience in middle school with the clarinet?
and high school.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh yes, in high school, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Okay. Um, what else did I have? So, interesting. So I'm interested in here when you were talking about. So in the first year, you were in the last row, and then your journey to that first row, and also like being that leader in the clarinet group. Um, like who was like your, I guess, like the person supervising you? Like, did they, like, was there like who? How does
Mm.
like the organizational like hierarchy work?
Okay.
Yeah, there.
So usually, well, that person is usually called the director.
Oh, okay.
So basically, or the conductor.
Mm-hmm.
We usually call him the director. Um, but he's usually the one you can say like your professor, for example,
Mm-hmm.
your teacher. He's the one who controls everything, and he's the one who, you know, I wouldn't say nitpicks, but what's the better word for nitpick?
Mm,
He
analyzes.
basically, yeah, like that, I guess. Um, he he basically just makes sure everything is how it's supposed to be because he needs to make sure the piece is correct. But every now and then, where we go into rehearsals, usually the first chairs or the soloists are the one who takes lead. But knowing that, me personally, even though I have that leader persona and what to do, like I'm always open to other people. Like if you want to practice something or if they need to do something or say something, feel free. Like even though I have that leader role, um, I feel like it doesn't make me any more or less than my other musician friends or colleagues around me because in the end we all need to work together to make sure that we're on point on what we need to do in certain sections. Now, yes, I mean in my experiences everybody there was more shy and they didn't really have that leader persona or like they didn't want to talk. I mean, I can understand that some people just don't have that, I would say, energy in that sense. But you know, the main point that I was trying to do is like, okay, um, just pinpoint what needs to be worked on. Um, basically practice it again and again that and make sure like they know what they need to do. And then from there we would come back and then we would rehearse as a whole again. But the hierarchy, um, for me, I feel like it's like dependent on how I wouldn't want to say skill, but I feel like the director knows how passionate a person is on how much they want to do something.
Mm-hmm.
So that was part of a reason why I was going up
Mm.
and with what I wanted to do. And then when I showed him that I was like really trying and stuff, then I would keep going up. And then I was always happy to like every year it was like, okay, here's a new piece, and then here's your role. And I was like, first, I'm like, yes.
Ah,
Yeah,
well, yeah, that's
but
super cool. Um, yeah, but that kind of like that progression, like that the
yeah.
director noticed your effort and your
Hmm.
abilities to perform, and you were up to the task.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's super cool too. In 3 years to kind of see that progression, because I mean, like the way that you were describing, that type of environment, like the whole recitals and like the whole kind of like tryouts, and then once you're in, like you can feel, the people. It's like a different atmosphere than you were in high school. People
Yes.
cared more, and people like, you know, and so in that environment, it's like really cool to see you kind of like flourish in there,
Hmm.
for your leadership to kind of like show, and for you to kind of climb up the ranks, and um, and and be a leader in that clarinet group. I'm sure that you helped a ton of people out
Yeah.
during your time there, so that's super cool.
Yeah. Made a lot of friends there. So it's good.
Definitely good. um, so interesting. Maybe a little bit. I mean, I'm a little bit interested on the. Well, okay, maybe another question. Another question. Let me see. Okay, so jazz. Okay, so to the jazz band, how how did you balance that? Like, how did you balance like the whole? Okay, so my question was just like, how the heck did you like train for like the whole clarinet thing, and then you also had to do the whole piano thing, and then was this around the time you were also doing like bioengineering stuff, or was by this time like it wasn't like that anymore?
Yes. Yes. So being a music major sucks a lot of time out of your day because mostly it's just practice. And thankfully, I had my piano here to practice when I got home, but usually the campuses will have these rooms where people can practice in, practice rooms basically. They have their own piano and people can go in there whenever they want. As long as you're a music major, you're free to use those rooms whenever you want to. So, if I needed the time and I was at college and I wanted to practice at on site, I would go in there and practice. Or, you know, um, after rehearsal or before rehearsal, like for clarinet, um, I was usually good not doing as much for clarinet just for the fact I just knew what I was doing, even though I know a lot of musicians will say like you need to practice. Uh, and they are right. You should always practice. But for me, I was very confident like with what I was doing, and you know, it wasn't that hard to, not do as much to get it down. So, but for piano, those were hours because again, like I said, I didn't know a lot what I was reading. It was all new. Even though I played in high school, there was just things I never understood. And it took me like I had to push myself because if I didn't do good enough, I could actually get kicked out. So it was stressful, but at the same time, like that stress helped me learn even more with jazz. So it was a lot, but in the end, it was worth it.
About how many hours do you think? I mean, if you were to say a day.
Like a day, in the beginning, probably 3 or 4. Yeah.
Wow, interesting. I mean, yeah, that's. I mean, that was. I mean, this show's just. I mean, that's pretty insane. I mean, that's just. you know, when I look at that, I mean, that is like, I mean, the amount that you did, you know, it seems like a lot of like, it feels like a lot of pressure. I mean,
It is.
I mean, a lot of pressure from like, you know, from the group because it is such a. I feel like it is like everybody's kind of like aiming for something high, you know,
Hmm.
and you know, in that journey of aiming for something high, and it's you know, it's something worth it to attempt and something worth it to dream and to work hard on. Um, and so, but I feel like there's a lot of pressure, you know, and so I see that in your, you know, in the clarinet group, and then I see that in your jazz group, and then I also see that in the environment of a double major. And so I'm like, wow, like that. I mean, that is a lot of like that requires a lot of time management, you know,
Yeah.
ability to prioritize, and wow, that is amazing that you were able to kind of get through all of
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. But, you know, experiences and, you know,
Yeah. Well, that I just want to make sure that that is clear that that is a very cool thing. What other questions do I have here? Okay, so the other big topic that I haven't talked about yet was kind of like the whole like okay a little bit on the diabetes thing and like um and kind of like your experience with it. So it's interesting a little bit because I remember you know when I was in college and I was learning because I took nutrition. I think I mentioned before, and so you know when we were kind of going over uh you know diabetes and like the types and the kind of like uh the different ways that people kind of approach it. Um, do you in like in the early stages of like of when you had it, it seemed like you had a very strict kind of way of like approach about it. Did anybody like how was your kind of like education with like that? Like was it how should I say it?
it was so basically I was always with my specialist one time every 3 months. So I saw them like, 4 times a year
Mm-hmm.
or even more, depending. Um, each time I go, I see my specialist, I see my dietitian, I see a healthcare worker, I see a social worker, I see a diabetes educator. There are so many people that I see during those clinics who are trying to make sure like I'm okay mentally. Uh, and then another one's like, am I okay at home? Because, I was young. They didn't want me to, child services.
What?
uh, dietitian was like, okay, you need to learn how to, read all of these. Okay. And then they would quiz me on like, okay, uh, how much does this have? How much does this have? And, nowadays I can just look at it and I know how much, unless I really don't know, then I would have to look. But over time, I can just look at it and know how much portion wise, and I would just know how much I'm getting. But that's like over the span of like sixth grade until now, like 12 years, 13 years.
Yeah.
So, um, yeah, 13 years with it. Uh, there was a lot of people who educated me, and there was a lot of events that I also went to, and my mom was very supportive on on it. And you know, again, like I mentioned earlier, like take everything that's a negative into a positive. This disease helped my entire family's eating habits completely for the better, including myself. as lifestyle. So even though yes, I do have to live with it, uh the positives that it came to change my entire family's eating habits, uh, the exercising, the support, going out more, making better choices. Like, I feel like all of those things outweigh, you know, just me having the disease. Like, because if realistically, if I just take care of it, which of course I am, um, I can just be as normal as any other person. And, think about it like, I just have this small thing I need to take care of. But now I have like all of these healthy things that I've included in my life, and not only in my life, but my entire family. So, you know,
I love that. When you're discussing that part about the whole like trying to change the negative to a positive. You know, I I like that. I definitely one of the things I've been a little bit of a psychology thing was just like I I think um a, people would benefit a lot. Like I think kind of very similar to what you were saying. I think people would benefit a lot if they take what happens to them and they really try to like interpret it as close to reality as possible. And like what do I mean by like as close to reality? Like a lot of the times when we process information in our brain, like many times like our brain does not accurately like represent what happened to what actually happened in reality. A lot of times it blows it out of proportion and makes it a lot more negative than what it really is. It happens often.
yeah,
I,
there are some people who, unfortunately, they don't see it that way, and it becomes worse than it should be.
mm-hmm.
So, you know,
Yeah.
yeah,
And I think it's kind of close to the idea that there you okay, so going through life you're going to suffer. Like life is suffering and there suffering exists and it hurts and it's painful and it's the conditions and situations that like we live with in the day to day. But there's a lot of unnecessary suffering that we inflict upon ourselves just by the way that we think about things. And I think that that is an area in which we have control over um, by changing the way that we think on certain things, kind of similar
yeah,
to you. And I think that's it's an avenue to reduce the unnecessary amounts of suffering that we are just personally inflicting upon ourselves, right? And I
yeah.
think that's kind of like what you're proposing by kind of like taking a look again at these things that happen to you and trying to um you know
Grab something out of it
yeah
that's beneficial.
yeah
Because in the end, what's happened has happened, and it's done. Like, hopefully, like in your head. Like, I mean, realistically, like, whatever has happened at that time, it's in the past. You know, from there, it can be a memory, and then from there, you can just interpret it in hopefully a healthy way, in the end. And that's what I hope people can do. And if you can grab something even more from it, that's even more beneficial, then that's even better. Like, grab something out of it that can either help yourself even more, or if you like talking to people and you like helping people, you can use those experiences to be like and tell people like what's happened, and maybe they can understand something out of it as well.
I love that.
Yeah,
I love that. Do you know? Okay, so by any chance have you heard of like Jordan B. Peterson?
I think so.
No, he's a professor. He's a psychologist professor. Um, and he's like he's really popular online. And I follow him. And and he one of the things he talks about memory, kind of what you just kind of spoke, is that he said that memory, the purpose of memory is not just to like remember things. The purpose of memory is to use your past experiences, so and to learn from them, so that you don't fall into the same pitfall as you were before. So to learn the lessons from
Exactly.
your past, so that hopefully in the future you can avoid that same situation.
Hmm.
Because um yeah. And the interesting thing is that that's true, because like the memories that keep recurring are the memories that typically have some sort of like emotion, like okay, some sort of negative emotion attached to it. And the reason why that's important is because like your body is like literally telling you like, hey, like this hurt us and we don't want to be in that position again. So what can we extract from, or what kind of lesson can we extract from this, so that we don't, you know, fall back into there, because that place sucks. And kind of similar to what you were saying, like, you can use that knowledge so that you don't fall back into it, but also to help others potentially not fall into that same pitfall, because it sucks to be in that place.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so interesting stuff. Interesting. So now do you think you mentioned that when you got the new insulin pump, um you like mentioned, like you can just be like, it gives you the flexibility to kind of um pretty much not be as strict,
Stressed and strict. Yeah.
stress and strict, because like you mentioned like the stress before, right? That you wouldn't eat something extra because like you had to like get another injection,
Mhm.
like that. I mean, I imagine that, like, you know f- yeah, I mean that would just be a pain, like you mentioned, like it might have been like an annoyance, but I mean I could see that. I'm like, man, like I don't want to, it's an added barrier
Yeah.
that it's just no one would want, no one would want to take on. I mean, it's just like, yeah. So I completely understood, at least I completely like, you know, feel that same kind of like potential annoyance and thing. But I'm glad that you're able to have more flexibility now and less stress to deal, and to be able to kind of like eat.
On the fly, basically.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So that's really good, man. That's really cool, and I'm happy that you you can do
Oh
that.
yeah. Yeah. Thankfully.
Yeah,
Yeah.
cool. All right. What was it? I mean, there's what else is there? Mm, okay, let's go into a little bit of after college. Um, do you like honey personally?
Yes. Yes, I do. So, um, personally, I never used honey before I got the job, but that I didn't mention this. That job also even improved our eating habits for for my family as well. You know, I got like all the special thing. I got like I never knew there was a mushroom that looked like a lion. Like they call it lion's mane mushroom. And it's
Interesting.
actually it's and I've read about it and it actually is a neurological benefit to eat it.
Why?
I don't know. It just had
Is it?
let me hold on. Let me see if I can and I know the guy who uh grows these and it's the only place that I can, you know, find it.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just through just by working. Like I found so many new foods that I never knew about. I found like so many interesting new ways on like how to um make things and stuff. So yeah, like I can probably just DM you this and probably you can read it later. But yeah, it's it looks like I mean if you want to see it, like it looks like it has hair on it. Or like but it's a lot of people say it's good for your neurological system. So as well as many other benefits. I mean, a lot of the farmers market stuff is, they usually have like the regular produce you find in markets, like supermarkets, but there are some interesting things you just don't find in supermarkets there. But yeah, in terms of the honey, I never knew that there was so many different varieties of honey. Like I always thought that there was the main two things that people use are wildflower and orange blossom honey. Those are like the staple ones that you can find anywhere. But then I was like, oh, what's pine tree? And then they're like, yeah, they get honey from trees too. And I'm like, what? I'm like, yeah. And then avocado, I never knew that bees get honey from avocados. It looks black.
It looks black.
uh um there's what else? There is eucalyptus honey that
And
we
you've
had.
tasted all these.
Yeah, I've tasted all of these.
How different is there a very distinct difference between all of them?
Yes.
Really?
Yes. Um, in terms of the sweeter ones, unless you know what you're looking for, a regular avid taster probably would be like, taste the same. But usually the darker honeys aren't as sweet as the lighter ones. They have a more darker, stronger flavor. And
Mm.
sometimes they won't even taste like how you think honey would taste like. So it's interesting, and each one has their different benefits, um, and different uses. It's and I had to learn all of them,
Because
and
you
I did
sold
very
all
well.
of them.
Yeah.
Really interesting. Huh. Did they? How do they sell? Like, were there certain ones that just people liked better, and ones that just people never bought?
It depends person to person. Um, Sometimes it depends on the season because allergies, for example, and that's very tricky to tell the customer because first off, in terms of honey, if you want honey for allergies, you can't just sell any honey. You have to know the area and you need to actually harvest the honey in like the closer the area where the consumer is, the better. So like let's say, for example, I lived in Las Vegas and you lived here and you know, still live in Long Beach, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Um, for me, let's say I live in Las Vegas, I would have to get a honey. Like, let's say we both had the same kind of honey for um allergies. So let's say we both had wildflower. So we have two wildflowers. But the difference is I can't get yours from Long Beach because the area where it's harvested in, the pollen that's in the air comes from that area. And basically, your body won't get the natural immunity from the flowers, from where I need it to be. So it really depends on where you live and where it's harvested. So I try to teach a lot of people in that way, and I did. So, it's pretty good to give them like extra knowledge about it. So, but yeah, uh it's like, some people may want it just for they say like what's the healthiest, for example. Generally the healthiest would be the darkest ones because of
Mm.
antioxidant properties. But if they're looking for something specific, like let's say uh for your blood, I would recommend them something else. Or
Mm.
let's say something for colds or coughs, I would recommend them something else. Let's say for sore throat, it really depends which would be the best for their needs. So,
Was there like a handbook for this, or how did you how did you,
uh,
did you research them all?
there was, yeah, I mostly researched them all. And then I had help with my boss, who was, the farmer. Um, he would tell me basically everything I needed to know because I also had to know like where the locations were where they were harvested. And I had to ask him like, "Oh, where are these boxes coming from?" And I just had them in my head basically. So everything was basically in my head. Um, and I just memorized it because so many people would would ask, and I would have to repeat myself many, many times. So that's how I uh, memorized it.
I see. Okay. Interesting. Interesting. Hmm. So you mentioned the you were like were you doing like Uber Eats or were you doing like DoorDash?
Yeah,
Okay.
Uber Eats. Yeah.
Interesting. And like when you started that, are so are you looking at like full time hours? Is that when you were talking about like making like
Um,
double?
just in general, like from what I see from an hourly standpoint, because I
Mm-hmm.
can see how many hours I've been out. I basically just do the math, and it's like I've made double in an hour than what I used to work at. So, an hourly basis in general, it's like double. But right now, I'm still like, I'm trying to go towards full time. I'm
Mm-hmm.
still like, my body still needs to get used to it by being
Mm-hmm.
out that long. So, right now, like, the most I do is like 4 hours. But the thing is, I make as much in 4 hours than I did in 8 hours for my last job. So basically, I'm making the same amount or even a little bit more. So,
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
yeah.
That is interesting. It's interesting. Okay, the question that popped into my head just now is completely different from that topic. But so
Hmm.
music, like how do you like see like how do you potentially see like you weaving in music to your like life like going forward now?
Have my piano.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, the thing is, even though I'm not currently in the big band or any of the wind ensembles, I mostly enjoy doing solo work. So, um, I'm pretty sure, as you know, or I'm not sure if you remember, I would every Christmas that we've had, I would always get this book that I've asked on, the wish list. Um, Basically, most of the things I like to get are like solo piano because I like um in a musical standpoint, I like how all the harmonies and the melodies kind of just blend in together in one instrument, and it like that one instrument, like considering it's piano, can bring a lot of that, I would say, emotion, passion, and that feeling of so much going around and just blending in so well together, like in solo works. It's so nice to hear, and which is why I like getting solo works because it can just bring out so much potential and, you know how to say, like, I like to say emotion, but I know there's a better way to say that. But when someone hears like a piano solo just by themselves, the people who create the music has in mind, like, especially like for solo repertoire, they want to make sure like everything sounds perfect in a sense. And that's what I like because it helps me bring out the most I can do in what I want to play. So the things I like to do, like, um I like some classical pieces, like Rachmaninoff, for example, but mostly I play things like Final Fantasy, uh Kingdom Hearts. Um I have some, Zelda and Mario. But those are designed for more advanced users because it the more harder it gets, the more that can be brought out in that piece, even though it requires more skill, I would say, but the payout in that sense is much better. So every now and then I would just practice, you know, those solo pieces.
Hmm.
So yeah.
Cool. That is super super cool. You know, like because like those like titles that you were mentioning, like Final Fantasy and like all those other ones, like I mean, I think a lot of people like dream that they can like play those things. Mm-hmm.
I have no idea. Yeah, you can probably get that out if you want.
It's all good.
um, what was I saying? No, wait, you were saying something. Yeah, you were saying something.
Yes, about the
Final
uh
Fantasy and stuff.
yes. I think it's super cool because I think a lot of people like they play those games and like a part of like that experience, a big
Is
part
the
of that
music.
experience is the music, and like people love that music, and I'm sure like a lot of people like would love to be able to like play that music, but don't
Exactly.
have the ability, but you have that cool ability to be able to do something like
Yeah.
that. No. Do you ever plan on like potentially like um I don't know, like recording, doing a cover?
There's so some people that know that I play piano want me to do it, but I'm like, I'm not entirely ready for it.
Mm-hmm.
Just mainly for the fact is like I don't feel like it's up to how my standards would want it to be because it's not perfect enough in my eyes. Like probably until like I get everything down, which depending how much I work on it, uh may come sooner or later. But I've always wanted to do just finish like probably an entire book or the three that I got from those three Christmases and then just make an entire thing. But that's a lot of playing. So, and those pieces are pretty difficult. So, like, and considering like work and life, like, you know, it may be longer than how I would want it to be, but that's just how it's has to be for right now.
True. Yeah, no, I mean, you're right. Those are a lot of obstacles, definitely. But I mean, I'll look forward to it.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's a bunch of other people that are gonna be also looking for that. So yeah, just whenever you release it, just send it out there.
Yeah.
Have you ever thrown away a dragon before?
No.
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 Never. Never. I will never. Uh I still remember the first one. Actually, let me see. The first one that I got, I think I think it was these two. Yeah.
Oh.
I got I think these were like the first two ones that I've gotten like in my life. I'm not
Oh.
sure if you can see, but yeah, they look they look like toys. They look childish, but uh down the line, like I would get something like I mean this was like over the years where I was like, yeah, I really like collecting them. I would get like stuff like well let me put these back. You can
Mm-hmm.
still hear me, right?
Yeah, yeah, I can still hear you.
Okay. I would get something like these ones are nice. I like these ones.
Oh, those are big.
These ones are like things I would love to get. Like this one is like, as you can see, it's like a drag, like
Whoa.
yeah,
It's like a skull. Skull.
yeah. And then this one is actually made out of pure wood, so I actually like the
Wow.
detail on it.
Where did you get that one?
My mom gave it to me as a birthday gift. I have
Wow.
no idea where she got it. Oh, but yeah, these are the things. These are like ones I like to get nowadays. Like it doesn't have to be like as detailed as that, but any of them would be pretty cool.
Mm.
But as much as I would show you all of them, I mean, I feel like there's too much for me to like go back and forth, and I would probably get tired.
I see. No, yeah, that's super cool. Dragons, so interesting. Yeah, I love that. You know about that. I love when people have like their own kind of like interesting.
Collection or something.
Yeah, because it's like it's something unique, and it's just like it's. I love it when it's kind of like hard to pinpoint like why you like it. Like for some reason, like I love things like that because it's like for me, it's orange. it's
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
like I can try to like logically try to like explain why, but like at the bottom, like the bottom line is like just always like if I see orange, like like I just get happy. It's just like inside, like something gets triggered where it's just like it just like triggers like warm feelings and like just positive vibes for me. And so, I always find it interesting to kind of hear about other people's you know, kind of similar experiences like that. Just like you see something and you just enjoy it for what it is.
Yeah.
Like there's no logic there's no like, oh yeah, it's because it's like it's just it's just what it is, and you get some sort of pleasure by just seeing what it
Mhm.
is.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's super cool, man. Oh man. So remember when I was inviting you on here, and you're like, I don't know if I have enough to like for enough content or like things to talk about.
Oh yeah, look where it's like 3 hour. I think it's about no, yeah, about 3 hours.
I think since we started talking 2 hours on the recorded podcast at the moment.
Hmm.
So I mean yeah, that's a lot stuff. In the beginning, you kind of told your story, and I mean I was like listening and like taking notes because I was just like I could not, it's just all very fascinating to me. You know, kind of like your journey and still very interesting. Uh, oh man, so interesting. If is there other questions? Like how has how has these last 2 hours been for you? Kind of like your
Oh,
experience.
I'm enjoying this. I'm honestly enjoying this. Like even though like podcast or not, like if I just hang out with somebody, and you're in this case it's you,
Mm-hmm.
and we're just talking about things like in this kind of way, um, I honestly don't mind it. Of course, um, depending on my schedule, how much time I have because I may be busy or things. So like I usually like to have like a time open where I just don't need to worry about anything. Like for example, right now when I told you like eight, you said eight, and I just like the feeling of just talking because it's just to me it's relaxing, you know. And in the amount of experience I've had with just talking to people, it's very interesting, and it kind of just you get this kind of expansion on how you view things in a sense, and as well as just some good times, you know, catch up. Uh, maybe one or another may find out something interesting that you may ponder upon like down the line, or maybe you may grab something out of this conversation that may benefit you. You know, everyone is different, but in a sense, it's like I personally enjoy talking. uh, it just I don't know. I mean, it like the environment, at least in this situation, like even though yes, you're my friend and stuff, like uh, it's very like I feel like in your shoes, like you kind of have to think about like, oh, how is this gonna work, and uh, then you're gonna have to go into post production, uh, and you kind of have to have like this outline of things to make sure like it kind of, I mean, fits what you want it to be, but you make it in a sense where it's like not entirely scripted.
Mm-hmm.
It's more like the feeling is more like two people just talking to each other, kind of just yeah, like you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely the vibe that these podcasts have run, I think that like, when I was creating it, and kind of like what my vision was for the podcast, it was always interestingly enough, I always had I knew there was two types of experiences that I was trying to keep in mind. So the one experience was like the experience that my guest would have. So like my interaction with the guest, and like how they feel like during the podcast. And then the other experience was, the potential people, the viewers that would tune in, and the viewing experience. And I think that for me, um like I'm good at like having a conversation like with another individual, and like just trying to like build an environment so that like my guest like enjoys the experience, because I think that like I do a good job of like providing them the space to tell their story, and giving them a platform where someone is like inherently interested in what they have to say, um, and have just free reign to just kind of like talk about themselves. Because I find that like people don't actually have like, don't usually have that space to do that in, to kind of like
Mhm.
talk about themselves, and then having someone just to listen and to respond and like be interested in what they have to say. And so yeah, so that's the one thing like and so I've tended to focus on the guest experience, because that, to me, like that's just what I do naturally well. Like I just like to make a yeah, I just like to have like a good time, I guess, with my guest, and like so the conversation just flows to what benefits us, like me and the guest, the most, right?
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of have you ever watched uh Hot Ones
Ah, yes, yes,
with
yes.
Sean Evans?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that that vibe is very similar to how you're trying to do it,
Mm-hmm.
even though it's probably a shorter time frame and production is much different there than here.
Yeah.
Um, but in terms of how you interact, it's very, I don't know if nonchalant is the right word.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you're engaged basically. And then like in the end, like you did ask questions as well. And then, I would talk and then we would like, of course, in terms of a podcast scenario, I feel like it's more lenient and time frame
Mm-hmm.
compared to, what he does. But, I think similar wise, it's the same vibe, except, different uh setting,
Right.
which is yeah. So
And
you're
it's
doing good. Yeah.
well, thank you. You know, that yeah, I mean that makes me, really happy to kind of like hear that, my guest is having a good time, and that we're having a good time. It's funny that it's because you were talking about the comparisons and the similarities about the two shows. When I was talking about the viewing experience earlier, you know, I knew like these longer kind of time formats. Um, they're not the ones that are like, how should I say, like they're not the ones that like are gonna be like wildly popular. Like because they are such a long time commitment, and like it's not that, and the ideas that come from these, they're not streamlined, as these like 10-minute episodes from these shows, and so obviously people get bored, and attention spans and stuff like that, but
Yeah. But
it's
there are also some people who just kind of like to listen. Uh, like for example, like for me, when I used to work at my engineering job, I would just put something on and just listen to them talk and have something in my head kind of thing while I'm working. I mean, some people have that thing too. I mean, as much as it's not as popular, it can still
An
go up.
audience.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I believe that too as well. There's definitely room for like stuff like this as well. Just like a very how should I say, longer format and like a lot more like lax and like with trying to get like points out. And I think the advantage to that is just like a more, I should say,
I guess it's like a more real kind of, well, not real. It's like I know what you're trying to say though.
yeah, it's like a more relaxed environment for two people to kind of like uh
Like there's like no time frame. You just like there's no kind of strict cutoff kind of thing in a sense. It's just, hey, you get your guest and you can talk as much as you want or talk as little as you want. Like there's no pressure to either of you, and whatever happens kind of happens, even though you do have this format in a sense, but the way you approach it and express it is um you're doing basically pretty good in that. Yeah.
yeah, thank you. I think it's an interesting place for ideas to come about. um that uh like I said, like you know not a lot of people like have this kind of opportunity, and so I think it's a special opportunity for people to kind of like to kind of potentially like string together their experiences, right? Because like when was the last time you, I guess, like thought about like elementary school, middle school, high school, college, after college, like all in one very like it as almost like a as like a it's a timeline, but like when have you really kind of like
Gonna look back on it and reflected on it, and
exactly. And I
yeah.
think it's a interesting perspective, to always have that wherever you're standing to look back and to see like potential patterns or potential like how you felt, like you were kind of mentioning like high school was like one way and then college was one way. And I
Mm.
think it's an interesting way to see like, oh, like why like was high school like that and why college was like better potentially. Like you can see like your progression, like the different, maybe different people you were hanging out with, maybe different habits or different routines that you implemented so that your life is like better. So yeah, that's cool. we I feel like we gotta do this again, Gustavo.
Yeah.
Like I don't even think we scratched on like all the other interesting
No,
stuff. I mean, like
there's
I
still a lot.
a lot. We didn't discuss the defining. I think we talked about like 20. We wanted to talk about 2020
2020, and
defining
then
moments.
yeah, and then ethics and morality. Um, there's a lot of things. I mean, of course, I already told you my schedule for this upcoming week.
Right.
Like I'm down to do it like as soon as next week. Like I think hopefully I can. I would have to let you know because depending on what happens Tuesday, if I finish early, then I don't have to do anything on Wednesday and I'll be free all day. It really depends. But then Thursday I'm free all day for sure. But yeah, like I can be like co-host. Like I don't know, but I mean, there's so many podcasts that I listen to, and it's
Mm-hmm.
just like um, and I'm pretty sure you remember Gary. He used to do
Mm.
podcasts.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, and they would just talk. They would just talk, and they're having a good time, and they're laughing, and it would last for at most like 4 hours, 3 hours.
Wow.
But like,
Mm.
you know, the point is like you listen to it and you're just kind of enjoying like what they're saying and how everybody's talking, and you kind of just I mean it's not for everybody of course, but like at least in my opinion it's like you're just listening and kind of like just going about your day kind of thing. Like you're not watching on your phone, you're just listening and doing whatever else you want to do at the same time. But yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I have to. I have not. Honestly though, I have not heard that name in a very long time.
Mhm.
Gary. Wow. Yeah, because I haven't. I.
Yeah, I talked to him quite recently.
Wow. Okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
I have
he's
no.
doing okay.
Okay.
Although he also got COVID.
Oh
But
wow.
yeah, yeah, me and him got COVID. He actually lost his taste for like a day.
Oh.
So, but yeah, he's okay.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, I have to talk to him too because I mean the fact that he did podcasts. I mean, I'm super interested now. I have. Yeah, I have to. I don't think he remembers me either because I mean, that was so long. I don't think I've ever talked to him once ever since middle school.
Middle school.
And like I don't think we were ever friends like on Facebook or Instagram or anything.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, so that is a friendly name to hear again. Um I'm gonna have to definitely talk to him. But yeah, definitely future episodes definitely down to like discuss those ideas and see where they go.
Oh yeah. And though they will go for hours. I remember I was talking, like I said before the podcast even started, like I just had a friend and we were just talking about so many things. Like it would jump from one thing to something on something so tangent about it,
Mm-hmm.
and then another tangent, and we would talk for like hours. I remember we were talking for like 5 hours at most. We were just like, wow, we literally spent 5 hours talking, and then he's like, yeah, and I'm like, wow. It was it's kind of funny, but yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like how yeah, you can just make anything. You can pretty much, you know, go as deep as you can possibly imagine and just trying to like just trying to find something, you know, concrete to like be like, yeah, like, we've looked into this and this and this and this kind of, it's just like a repeating pattern and it's just like, maybe this is a thing. Like maybe this idea is plausible and even after all that the idea can be totally wrong and but it's just like it's it's the only thing we can ever try to do.
Mhm.
Make a noble attempt at understanding the vast infinite out there.
Yeah.
All right, Gustavo. I think we'll end the episode here. It was a pleasure
Yeah.
to get to talk
Same
to
as
you.
well.
I'm happy that you were able to get your webcam together
Yes.
and get your room and you know kind of sort a little bit at least all that
Mhm.
insurance stuff.
Yeah.
That's good. And yeah, listening to your story was yeah, I didn't know a lot of that stuff. Even though we had that one talk, like I didn't know like 80% of that stuff, and it was fascinating to kind of like hear what happened, like hear your experience. That was all cool, and thank you for answering my questions. I know there were a lot of questions that
Oh, don't
I
worry. It's
asked.
okay. I like questions.
Yeah, and yeah, and I'm sure that the people that listened up to this point were also very entertained. I think that you know you were talking a little bit about your leadership, that kind of popped up a couple times in your discussions, and I could see that the way that you kind of like approach ideas, the way that you kind of handled yourself throughout the podcast in terms of like answering questions and telling your stories and your thoughts, like definitely like you're well spoken, and I could definitely see that. So thank you for coming on today. And I hope we get to do something like this again and discuss other ideas.
Oh,
Uh,
I'm sure. Just hit me up. Yeah, just hit me up. I would love to just talk, you know. I kind of need that, like just to talk, Doesn't have to be like about me. It can just literally be about anything that interests either of us, to be honest. Or if like maybe down the line it could be like a three-way. You never know. Depends how you want to move forward with what you want to do with this.
yeah,
So,
definitely. I'm definitely open to those possibilities, and you know, I mean, I also love discussing ideas, and so
mhm.
everything's on the table with that.
Yep, for sure.
All right. All right. Thank you for coming on. That'll end the seventh episode of the Gabriel podcast. Thank you, Gustavo, for coming on, and thank you for the ones that listened all the way up to this point. And I hope you have a great rest of your day. See you guys.
See ya.
Bye.